Here at the BQN Network, we support and express solidarity for all of the writers and actors that have brought us the stories we passionately speak about. We continue to show love to all that are fighting the good fight for the WGA, SAG-AFTRA, and any upcoming strikes. We stand with you. You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Welcome to Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast on BQN. We're here to showcase the films you probably missed, but should definitely check out, from independent and obscure to art house and absurd. Each episode will gather, perhaps cocktail in hand, to discuss it all. I'm your host, Laz Marquez, and with me today are Mark White and Matthew Jennings.
Hi, I'm here.
Hello.
Hey guys, what are you drinking today?
What is this called? I told you guys and I already forgot. I told you it's not drugs. Hold on. It
Are you sure?
Have been inspired by the film we're going to cover today.
Yes. Okay, so it's technically, it should have been a purple mist is the name of the drink. It is 2 ounces of vodka, a half ounce of blue curacao, a half ounce of cranberry juice, ice, and a lime twist. I started making it, got to the cranberry juice, and realized it had expired and there was actually some green growth on it. So I did not put it in it.
But that could have also gone right in with the film that we're talking about today.
Our listeners are so grossed out right now. Instead, I filled the rest of the glass with Sprite.
Okay. You know, it's always hard to follow up with Mark's drinks because Mark does like this fancy on-theme stuff, and my stuff is always like from 7-Eleven in a can. I mean, I own it. I have no shame. So today, I didn't go to 7-Eleven. I went to Ralph's, which is a grocery store for listeners that have never been to California. So I'm stepping up my game. I'm getting my wine coolers from a grocery store.
Girl.
And I have a lovely bottled blueberry margarita.
Those sound incredible. I am following the theme of nature and my usual H2O, which,
my Lord.
I don't know, mist might come from.
We respect it.
It's a theme. It's keeping with the theme.
Could be water, could be vodka soda. Don't know.
So now that our bodies are lubricated, shall we go into some feedback from some of our fans?
Yeah. So we've got some feedback from one of our OG fans, Melly. Also, thank you, Melly, for being amazing and supporting the podcast. You can find them over on X through their handle at MEL_MED_LARSON. Melly said, "Love this pod. Mark, Matt, and Laz are the real ones." Oh my gosh, thank you. Mark, Matt, and Laz are the real ones. They list movies you should have seen while avoiding the usual fanboy fawning over directors like Tarantino.
Accurate.
Thank you.
Applause. We love you, Melly.
Instead, we fanboy about the shirtless men in movies.
We do. And their butts.
In the butts. In the tush. We also... Oh, I'm so happy to announce this. Historian Lynette Newsbacher has checked out our podcast, and she listened to the last one we did on Oppenheimer and posted 2 things. So the first one was evidently a quote about Oppenheimer's martinis. And so the first part was hearts of youth, hearts of truth, 6 parts gin to 1 part vermouth. So thank you, Lynette. And then she continued, and I love this. This is so sweet. "It's significant that your podcast has so much to say about cinematic physical intimacy in the context of the great moment of history. The film is about the great and petty lives of 2 great and petty men. The direction of sex and naked scenes were so integral."
Mm-hmm.
So lovely.
such a, it's a well thought out message.
Well said.
And yeah, it meant the world. If you want to follow Lynette, you can find her on BlueSky and on Twitter. Just search for her name, Lynette Newsbacher. And again, she's a historian. She has a few shows. She's kind of a big deal. And I was so thrilled to see that she actually listened to our little pod and commented. So thanks, Lynette. You're amazing.
Thank you, Lynette.
Much. So today we are excited, most specifically me. I'm torturing Mark and Matt with starting off and
tortured.
Don't want to kink shame.
So we're starting off the spooky season early with our first horror film. So we are covering today The Mist. The Mist, also known as Stephen King's The Mist, is a 2007 American science fiction horror film based on the 1980 novella The Mist by Stephen King. The film was written and directed by Frank Darabont. And what happens in this film? After a powerful storm damages their main home, David Drayton, portrayed by Thomas Jane, and his young son head into town to gather food and supplies. Soon afterward, a thick fog rolls in and engulfs the town, trapping the Draytons and many others in the grocery store. Terror mounts as deadly creatures reveal themselves outside, but that may be nothing compared to the threat within, where a zealot, played by Marcia Gay Harden, calls for a sacrifice. Oh my word.
Let me tell you, Miss Harden, she did the thing. I'll say more later, but
oh yeah, me too.
Did the thing.
They did the thing.
I agree. So I'm curious from both of you, what did you enjoy about this film? And after watching it, why do you think others should watch it? Or maybe they don't.
So I went into this curious. In general, like I've seen a lot of like Stephen King's movies. This is really bad. I used to be his neighbor. I lived down the street from him. I've talked to him numerous times. Like I know Stephen King, but I've never read any of his books. Anyway, get that out of the way. But I have seen a lot of the films based on his books. And I always kind of watch it with a little bit of I'm supporting, a local. So I kind of wanted to see it for that. But also I remember seeing the trailer. I didn't watch it when it came out, but I remember really getting haunted by the trailer and having it stick with me and knowing that this was something original. This was something different. This was something I haven't seen before. This is a really curious idea for Hollywood, especially the fact that the bulk of it takes place in a grocery store, oddly enough. The whole thing was just a lot of different ideas flipped on its head and done in a different way that I found really intriguing. And I would say that if people are interested in seeing a film for spooky season that makes their spine tingle a little bit and uneasy and unnerved, but has some really good plot development, I would suggest this would be a good film to watch for them.
So I'm going to embarrass myself a little bit and say initially when we were talking about watching The Mist, I was thinking of The Fog.
Oh, yeah.
And I just thought, oh, The Fog, I saw that. That's a cute little movie. Okay, I'll go ahead and just put that on.
Did you rewatch The Fog?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I looked up The Mist and I started watching it going, this isn't the movie that I saw a few years ago. This is so different. Okay. I will say that this movie, oh boy, I think especially with where we are now, this is why I think art is so important and artists are underappreciated. This movie, for me, what stuck out the most was the religious zealotry, if that's even a word, because it starts off to be something that you can kind of brush off. And as the movie goes on, it grows and grows and grows and becomes very, very dangerous. From someone that has come from a religious background, I have seen the beauty of being able to have a spiritual life, and I've also seen the ugliness of that kind of spirituality or quote unquote spirituality in people that are just using it to exercise their will and their own bias. And so that's what stuck out to me the most with this movie. And I think that was the most scary thing. And with where we are now with certain people in our government trying to use religion as a hammer, I think this movie is so important to watch.
I think you both really pretty much summed up how I feel. For me, it's weird because this film, it's decades old at this point, but it's still so relevant to like our current society. Like you mentioned, religion, but also just like how we can very easily turn against each other, how when stress is involved in our lives, how we just blame one another and don't do the right thing for each other. So it's something that watching it again, I was like, oh yeah, we're still here. That's so strange.
We absolutely are. I mean, this makes me think of the when I was watching it and I was watching the situation in the grocery store slowly decay. I was thinking of the Stanford experiment.
Yep.
With those students in 1971. Okay, so listeners, for any of you that don't know, there was this experiment at Stanford University in 1971. It was in the basement of Jordan Hall. And it was the Stanford prison experiment, and it was just trying to examine the psychological effects of authority and powerlessness in a prison. And the study was led by Professor Philip G. Zimbardo. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. But when you look at this movie, when you look at The Mist, and when you read about what happened with the Stanford students, there are some undeniable similarities. And that's what I kept thinking about throughout this movie too. It's wild.
I think part of what works with this film is on the adverse of what Mark said, I've read so much Stephen King, and it's why I adore a lot of the adaptations that have come. Some work better than others, but they're always rooted in such like primal societal issues that we often run from, and that's the real horror versus the actual horror itself.
Exactly.
So with that, I wanted to try something a little different in this episode. If you're tuning in as a new viewer, if you haven't seen this film yet, but you're intrigued, just something where we can ask some questions within our host panel and give some context around things that happen in the film. So in this film, as I mentioned, mist shows up. It's mysterious. We don't know what it is. So I'm curious from each of you, if a mist showed up, if after this huge storm, and it wasn't normal, it wasn't common, you see like police cars and fire trucks going nuts, what would you do in that situation?
In the context of the film, like if I was at the grocery store, I would have tried to go home. Like I would instinctively want to get to my house, check on my dog, my partner, like whatever. Like I would try to get back to the house. And I was thinking about that, even though there's that one guy that ran towards the windows and was like, like it's gonna get you, blah, 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 and then you hear him go to his truck and the mist sort of envelops him, and then you just hear the screams. I feel like I would have had even more urgency to just find my car. Like I wouldn't have hung out at the grocery store. That's me.
Jumping in there, I just want to highlight one of my favorite characters in this film, played by The Walking Dead's Melissa McBride, who is famously known as playing Carol in that show. She's the woman who, at the beginning, when things start to get bad, she's like, hey, I left my kids at home for a second to get supplies. Will somebody, walk a woman home? And like everyone just completely walks away from that situation and she leaves. And that resonated with me so much because she did, I think, Mark, what you're saying, which is it's like, I got to get out of here. I have, like somebody to protect, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I could totally relate to her. And I mean, hopefully our listeners have seen the film, and I don't want to give too much away, but she ends up okay. And I'm glad she ends up okay, because I spent the entire movie worrying about that bitch.
Like, I have to say, I think so. Black people in these situations
Are usually the first to go.
they're
Sorry.
either the first to go, or in real life, the moment that we see a police car outside and sirens and whatever else. I mean, if I saw that before I left the house, I would have just stayed inside and said, well, I guess I'm just going to put on a cute movie. And, and that's going to be the evening until this all dies down. Because some of this makes me think about when COVID started to happen as well. You know, people going to the grocery store, getting, whatever. So there's also another part of me that, especially if I was with my partner at the time, would have wanted to be some kind of provider, some kind of protector, and say, okay, I'm going to go out. We're going to get this. We're going to get this. We're going to get this, and we're going to do this. So there was this instinct of me to be a protector of what I have, and self-preservation.
What did you think of the response of, there was, sorry, I don't remember the name of the character, but the one black guy that was in the film was very hesitant to believe the other characters when they were saying that there was something in the mist. And what did you think about his story arc, or that character in particular?
By the way, his character's name is Brent Norton, and he's played by Andre Brower.
I think, because I'm thinking about it from a real life perspective, he was the one person of color for the most part in this town. And thinking about
it was realistic.
There we go. From what he's probably seen and been exposed to, I can't blame him for having that kind of reaction. I would probably have that reaction to, I am the one person of color here around the rest of these white folks. I'm like, these white folks are so crazy. Let me just go on and get my milk and go home. Mm-hmm. So I think coming from it from that perspective, I don't know if there was any other way that he was going to react to that situation. I don't know.
Well, I think part of it as well was that he was acting almost as the audience, like, this stuff would never happen in real life.
Yeah.
He was very much like the straight man in the film.
Yes, you're absolutely right. That's what it is.
Whereas everyone else, I think, was a little more accepting of, supernatural going-ons. So I'm curious as well. I think we've kind of mentioned some characters we like, but I'm kind of going to open up the forum to see if you guys want to highlight anyone else.
I am going to highlight Marcia Gay Harden. Did I say her name right?
I think it's Marcia Gay Harden.
Marcia Gay Harden. Her performance was so haunting and so spot on. I hated her. I hated her very much. And I think, again, coming from a religious background, there was a little bit of trauma there that was triggered from just some of the things that she was saying, the way that people were hoarding around her and starting to elevate her as this religious icon, this prophet. It was all a little uncomfortable to watch. And, again, being someone that had to find their own spirituality on their own time, to see people just mindlessly flock to this person was wild, but it was so accurate. And I think that character was so necessary, and the performance was phenomenal.
I think there's something to be said as well about, there's a difference between having faith or believing in something. If anyone who's listening to this believes in a religion,
right,
as long as it's healthily part of their life and how they interact with others, I fully support it. But I think with Miss Carmody, the issue there was she wasn't a base good person. Very early on, we see her, even before she rises in power, quote unquote, within the situation, there's this sense that she just doesn't care about other people, like truly. And I think when you weaponize religion, that's where issues begin to happen.
I would say that's reminiscent of what a lot of people's issues with the police are, because the people that usually go into these fields are people that may have been treated poorly in the past and might be turning to some sort of vindictive nature where, oh, I'm going to show them now, and I've got my badge and I've got my gun. And it's sad to say that, because I do know good police officers and I do support wholeheartedly the police department and think that they're necessary. But I also know that there's also a systemic problem within most departments of this cruel, sadistic behavior.
Yeah. And I think as well, we see in this film a lot of examinations of different kinds of structures, right? So we see the military having some issues as well in terms of transparency or letting on what might be happening. We see that, you know, religiousness, we see different walks of life, you know, somebody who's from the cities versus somebody who's like based in the town. So you're seeing a lot of different nuances within one story. So I always appreciate that when I watch this film.
Yeah.
So for me, a standout character is, I gotta say, is Ollie Weeks.
Yeah.
Because immediately I was like, that's Toby effing Jones. Yes, I could swear. Toby fucking Jones. I was like, what's he doing in this movie? Because he is an incredibly accomplished actor.
Yes.
And brought such prestige to the part of this low-level manager at a department store. And I was shocked. I was like, what is he doing here? But he represented, I feel like the character maybe closest to me was somebody that was definitely maybe undervalued by their peers, looked to be less than, maybe because of his height or physical stature, made to feel most of his life like he wasn't worthy of promotions or attention or anything else because of things outside of his control. And he's from this small town and everybody's talking and everybody's treating him less than. But then in the end, who's the hero? Toby Jones.
He's one of the most capable people in this film.
Yeah. He ends up being the hero, and it's not the Brad Pitt character or whoever, you know, it's Toby Jones. So rock on. I love
Applause to that. I love it. So I think we covered some of the other questions I had. So viewers, are you prepared for us to perhaps act out some of our favorite scenes or favorite moments from this film? I think you might be.
And now we're pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
I heard applause. There's definitely applause.
Yeah,
I can hear it.
Definitely add that in post. Okay, so I'll play Amanda. Who wants to play Dan?
I can be Miss Carmody. I'll do it.
Okay. I guess I'll be Dan.
Action.
You don't have much faith in humanity, do you?
None whatsoever.
I can't accept that. People are basically good, decent. My God, David, we're a civilized society.
Sure, as long as the machines are working and you can dial 911, but you take those things away, you throw people in the dark, and you scare the shit out of them. No rules.
Cut.
Okay, so next scene.
Action.
I just want you to know that it's okay being scared. And well, if you need a friend, someone to talk to.
I have a friend. God up above. I talk to him every day. Don't condescend me.
I'm sorry?
Not ever. You don't mock me.
That's not what I was doing.
I'll tell you what. The day I feel like I need a friend like you, I'll just have myself a little squat and shit one out.
Cut.
So, folks, we can see Miss Carmody.
Oh,
and this is
great.
before any crazy shit happens. She's going after people. Oof.
That was such a great scene. It was haunting. I was like, oh wow, she's cold.
She sure is.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, it is sometimes it's those people that they claim to be the most religious, the most whatever. I work with someone on the job that is one of the meanest human beings I've ever met in my life. And she literally she said that there was a battle going on between the light and the dark. And she was talking about the Republicans and the Democrats.
Oh my Lord.
It was like
You've mentioned her before on this podcast.
Yes.
What episode was that?
I can't remember now.
I don't know
it was
what
the first one, but she said it's a battle between the light and the dark. So I say all that to say there are many Miss Carmodys out there. They're out there.
Can we make your coworker like a recurring character that just pops in like our episodes?
Oh, I'm writing.
She was
stuff
the
down.
tax lady in the first one. That's right.
I'm writing stuff down.
You should make a Twitter or a BlueSky account just for her comments.
Oh, something's coming. She's gonna make me a lot of money one day, and at the end of her life, she's gonna know it was me.
We'll just keep calling her Mrs. Carmody.
Mrs. Carmody. Yes, that's it. That's it. Miss Carmody from now on. Miss Carmody.
Your coworker is so versatile. Like she could be anybody.
Oh my Lord. Not as verse as Matt, I guarantee it.
That is personal information that is on my Grindr profile.
Viewers.
Oh my God, it almost came out my nose. That burns.
Well,
heard. So, moving on to what would you change about this film and what would it be and how? Personally, I'll get mine out of the way because it's simple for me. I chose the film. Personally, I wouldn't change a thing. I think in general, the script is like really tight and examines a lot of themes that we've been speaking about. And I love those kind of narratives. A lot of times I think people look at me and my love for darker films or horror as a sign of me just being like a creepy person who likes to see people get killed, when in fact, like, I'm not rooting for a killer. I don't like Michael Myers. I don't like Freddy Krueger. I like the survivors. I think that is why horror resonates with me. And there's plenty of studies, and we'll share that on social media for anyone who's interested. There's a lot of studies that with horror or thrillers, there's an actual physical response that happens where you actually leave that experience in that film or TV show with a lot more release and positive energy, because you're able to have a certain sense of catharsis through seeing others struggle and perhaps come out of it on the other end.
That makes sense. Okay.
So it's almost like going to therapy, but you're seeing, I don't know, perhaps dark themes and people sometimes getting murdered.
Casually, like you do on a Friday, you know.
Other than that, I would say Thomas Jane, I'm not sure he's the right person to be the male lead of this. I think some of the casting works enough for me, but I think it could have, in other circumstances and other actors or actresses, elevated the piece even more.
I can't think of anything that I would change. I mean, but okay, so I can think of one thing that I would change, but this is a personal thing, so I don't know if this is even valid. I don't want to kink shame. The gore and the spiders with the webbing from the butt. That is not only webbing, which comes from a spider's butt. Okay, I'll accept that. That's fine. But that webbing coming from the butt of that spider is also acidic and it burns people. I think that's an abomination and a sin against God. And I just didn't need to see it. I just didn't need to see it.
So that isn't something that comes up on Grindr?
No, it's not my kink.
Yeah, okay.
Again, don't want to kink shame. Hey, if you like webbing coming from the butt and having it be acidic, you do you, have at it. It's just not for me.
You heard it here first, folks. We support butt webbing and acidity with that webbing.
Yes.
Shaming you.
We
We're
stand.
not kink shaming.
How about you, Mark?
I don't know. I enjoyed the cast. I was surprised, I guess, to see so many really great character actors in this. We've named a few already. I don't know. I feel like maybe it's because the genre itself isn't my genre, that maybe to me it felt a little long in the tooth. Like it could have been shrunk a little bit. There's some stuff that could have been tightened maybe a little bit. But with that said, maybe we would have lost out on some of the great character development that we got at the beginning. So for me, it did feel a little long, but it could just be because I'm just not into the horror genre that much. But I did appreciate, and this is actually something that I did appreciate, that the characters got developed so well in the beginning, which doesn't, I feel like, happen in a lot of any type of movie. I feel like that's my critique for a lot of modern films, is that, okay, we're throwing in these characters, we're throwing in these scenarios, we don't know who they are, we're not really emotionally invested. And here's a movie that went out of its way to do that. So I appreciate it, but also I feel like areas could have been tightened, where it could have been a little bit shorter.
That totally makes sense. So with that, shall we go into our standouts? Matt, would you like to kick us off?
Yes. So I'm just gonna go back to Miss Harden. She did the thing. She scared the hell out of me in so many ways. I have to give it to her. I also think her work is just not appreciated enough, and I feel like we don't see enough of her in film and television. She was great, and we need to see more of her.
For sure. How about you, Mark?
Well, I thought she was fantastic as well, and also Toby, but you guys already know that. Anyway, I will say I liked the way that I got scared in this film. And I think that these have to be directorial choices here. Like the part of the film where that one guy heads out and they tie the rope to him. Then all of a sudden they're pulling it back and there's just all this blood. I mean, that was perfect. When that young guy is going out to check on, I don't know, the air filtration system, and that one redneck is like, just go check on the thing. And the kid like goes out from under the what is it, the doors, the back
Store
doors.
Twink, or Produce Twink. We'll call him Produce Twink.
But it was done so well where not seeing the monster is what made it scary, right? And there wasn't a lot of noise in this film. Like when I think of this film, I don't think of like the soundtrack, I think of the sounds more than the soundtrack. I think of the sounds of the machine malfunctioning in the back of the grocery store. I think of the sound of them pulling the rope and his hands getting burned as the rope is getting yanked and the blood and stuff then. But it's these sounds that sort of ground the whole piece in reality. And so anyway, I appreciate, I guess, the director, some of the choices that he made, I feel like made it more scary than I think in somebody in less capable hands.
Yeah. It's also kind of interesting. I look at this movie and it's almost like, I don't know, the Stranger Things prequel. Like, especially when they talk about how, these beings came from another dimension, and I was like, Stranger Things.
It's funny. Somebody actually mentioned to me the same thing. Like, oh, is this like the Upside Down?
Oh, it's very much. I mean, this is like, I think that this paved the way for, this movie, along with many others, paved the way for Stranger Things to be where it is. Speaking
of sci-fi, okay, Sam Witter was in this, okay, and he played Private Jessup.
It's a very tasty treat.
Okay. He also was in Battlestar Galactica, one of my favorite sci-fi shows of all time. And he was around the same age. So I think he filmed this back to back with BSG or around that time because he looked exactly the same. He was also in the military in Battlestar Galactica, and he's in the military in this. So his character was pretty much the same guy, just in Maine in a grocery store. But it was great seeing him, and I thought he did a good job in staying with the character that he's done so well.
And also going along with the military team that was in the grocery store. One of my friends, he's doing well for himself now, and I'm very happy for him. Walter Faulkner-Roy. He was the black military officer that I think ends up getting hung in the webbing at the end of or middle of the movie. Can't remember when it happens, but anyway, I was watching the movie, and I was like, Walter?
Oh my God, he's such a snack. I'm sorry he got in the webbing.
Walter. Well, there you go. No, Walter and I, we did a play called Port Chicago together a couple of years ago about these black soldiers in World War II that were supposed to handle ammunition, and just were not given any kind of proper tools to do their jobs appropriately, and a very horrible accident happened. That's a little piece of black history that's not exposed a lot, but I did that play with Walter, and I want to say a year down the road, he was in he's in The Oval, which is on BET. It's a Tyler Perry production, but he's on The Oval now. And yeah, Walter, I was happy to see you. It was a nice surprise.
Does he need a housekeeper or a pool boy?
I don't know. I think he's married. I think he
that's not what I asked. Anyway.
So I guess my standout before I get there, I just want to say I feel like such a proud papa right now, because for eons we've been talking about potentially doing some sort of like horror things, and both of you have been like, I don't really like horror. So the fact that we've been able to have such a nuanced conversation is awesome, and I'm glad that you guys really took the chance on this one. So I just feel again like a proud papa.
Laz, I will not do this for a lot of people. I did it for you. I did it for you. And when I went into it, I thought this was going to be a wholesome, cute little horror movie.
Fair
I
enough.
sat next to my boyfriend, and we looked at each other after the movie in shock, and we were like, let's watch some YouTube videos before we go to bed, because we can't go to sleep with this.
I started this without Andy, mind you, and he came right over and was like, popcorn, like, no. I'm watching this, like,
God.
Him and Laz have like the same taste in films, so he was like all about watching this movie, so it was a good bonding experience.
So I'll say my standout in this film, very minimal role, but I want to go for something we haven't covered previously in this episode. But again, Melissa McBride as what she's labeled in the cast as woman with kids. Just having that character, mind you, I will have a trivia on this, but having such a short segment where she shows so much emotion, and I think really encapsulates a lot of the themes of the film, both at the beginning and at the end, is really powerful. So kudos, Melissa McBride.
Now, I have a quick question. With the way that the characters were, I guess, labeled in the script, a lot of it is very much like woman with kid or a father or groceries. Was that on purpose? Was there an artistic choice to that? Do we know?
It is curious. I think it's probably because the source material is based on a novella where not have had names. Therefore, they are what they are. If we don't know them, the other characters probably don't either. So I assume it's an artistic choice. So with that, let's go into some trivia before we give you our final thoughts. So the character of David Drayton is directly inspired by legendary poster artist Drew Struzan, who, listeners, I love. Check out his work. He has famously created posters for Star Wars, The Thing, Indiana Jones, and like so many more. So check it out. I'm a poster artist myself. That guy changed my life.
Well, at the beginning of the film, he's working on a poster, and horror fans, which I'm not, but I'm a nerd, so I just got it. But he was working on a poster of, was it the Gunslinger, right? From what was the book?
Dark Tower.
The Dark Tower series, of course.
Okay.
I immediately recognized it, and they had Idris Elba had been in the movie that they did, The Dark Tower, which wasn't bad. I think a lot of people hated it. It wasn't bad.
I want to see it. I still haven't got to see it. I want to see it.
You should. It was a good movie. I liked it.
Fun fact, I did the steelbook for that.
That's so cool.
Oh, so meta.
Listeners, you heard it here. If that steelbook is where was it? Was it at, can we say this? Can we say Walmart or Target? Can we say that stuff on the podcast?
Released through Sony. So I don't know if it's still available, but if it is, we'll let our listeners know through social media.
I'm sure it's out there on eBay somewhere, at least if it's not in print anymore. That would be really amazing for people to get it.
Yes.
That's all. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this film is basically a who's who for fans of The Walking Dead, featuring Jeffrey DeMunn, Laurie Holden, and Melissa McBride.
I also love The Walking Dead. So viewers, let us know what you think about that.
Stephen King says that he was genuinely frightened by this adaptation of his novella. Frank Darabont described that as the happiest moment of his career.
Okay.
So, the movie scared Stephen King, so I'd say it's pretty good.
That's how I feel. I feel like if Stephen King was scared, I feel validated now even more. Okay.
So Stephen King got the idea for the source novel when he was in a Maine market. When he noticed the front window was made of plate glass, he wondered what would happen if giant insects flew into it.
Look, see, this is how we know that Stephen King just has a unique mind. Like artists, sometimes some artists just have very specific things going on out there and you never know. I personally would never think to myself, well, you know what if right now while I'm at the Piggly Wiggly, a giant spider with acidic webbing coming from its butt just walks in to the door? I wouldn't be thinking about that. Stephen King does. Some people are just gifted that way.
It's northern Maine, so it was probably the Hannaford or Shaw's.
Is that the name of the grocery stores?
Hannaford. If you're from Maine, you pronounce it like that. It's Hannaford, but it's Hannaford.
Why is it they want you to say a line from Pet Sematary from Judd Crandall? Better. I can't do a Maine accent.
My dad, when I'm FaceTiming with my dad, people just come from other rooms to see who's talking because it is so insanely thick of an accent. It's like a spoof of a Maine accent, but that's my dad's accent.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I went to broadcasting school, so any kind of accent I had got whipped out of me. It's slowly come back a little bit here and there, but a lot of it got nipped in the butt.
This is the third film that Frank Darabont has adapted from Stephen King's work. The other two are The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile.
Both amazing.
Mm-hmm. And who would think, just off the top of their head, that Stephen King wrote The Shawshank Redemption or Green Mile?
Or Green Mile. Yeah.
I love those films, but I don't know Frank Darabont. I didn't even recognize his name at all, but he's made both those movies. And I'm like, oh, they're fantastic movies. But anyway, Frank Darabont agreed to make the film with Dimension only under the condition that no matter what, they wouldn't change the scripted ending. And they agreed. Oh, man. I forgot I was going to rewrite that, because if I had to rewrite, that ending was no, too much. No, I disagree with the ending. They should have changed it. They should have forced a change so it wasn't so bleak.
You know, it's funny. I expected you to mention this earlier, so I didn't include it in this trivia. But Stephen King has gone on record many times saying if he could rewrite his own story, he would actually end it the way the film ended.
How did it end in the book?
Not like that.
Oh,
I'm so curious now. How did it, dare I ask, was it more optimistic than the way that it...
Anything would have been more optimistic than that.
Perhaps. I've read it, but I encourage, especially now, that people go out and support writers of any kind
and read before they ban everything.
That's true. It's funny, the amount of movies made from Stephen King books, but also short stories and novellas, because Secret Garden, Secret Window was turned into a movie, Secret Window, starring Johnny Depp, and it's one of my favorite spooky films. And I used to quote it with my best friend all the time. And it was also just a short story. They get extrapolated on and turned into a film, and it's really, really good. So I encourage our listeners, if you're looking for Halloween stuff, that's another good one.
Mm-hmm.
And yet again, I'm surprised and so proud. We're giving so many recommendations for horror stuff. These boys have lied to you.
Oh, no.
So let's give some final thoughts.
Oh, I was going to throw in one last little bit of trivia. This is Trekkie trivia. For any
Here it comes. I thought we would make it a whole episode. Nope.
Sorry, I can't help it. All right, so we've got for any Deep Space Nine fans, any fans of Section 31 itself, we've got the great William Sadler, who played Sloane in Deep Space Nine.
What's he doing in this movie?
31. Oh, he played Jim. He played Jim in The Mist.
Oh. He was also Death in the Bill and Ted movies.
Well, William works, and William hops universes, and he hopped from, maybe he came to Maine in The Mist from the wormhole. Section 31 works in mysterious ways.
We could literally do an entire episode of Trek actors and actresses that have appeared in horror.
Oh my God. Absolutely. 100.
Just saying.
Mel Larson's been pushing for that for a while. She's not even into Trek. She just keeps bringing it up. She's like, you guys should talk about Trek more.
I mean,
she's
Patrick
not even
Stewart
into Trek.
Patrick Stewart was in one, wasn't he?
I also did a steelbook for.
There we go. Also, if that's not in print anymore, let's find it on eBay.
Wait. What was the movie? Sorry.
Force. One word.
Oh, I thought you were talking about, there was one that was the green something or whatever, and he did that with the guy that played Chekhov in the new movies. And that was his last film before he died.
That was awesome.
And the two of them were together, and it was a horror film. Trivia!
I didn't see that one, but that was, I saw the trailer, and that was freaking scary.
A great film. He does amazing. Life Force. It's not a great movie, but if you're young,
he's honest. As anything, he's honest.
Just saying. I know I worked on it, but no. So let's give our final thoughts. I'm thinking, considering that Mrs. Carmody decides to drink milk a lot during this film, the bottle, can give glasses of Mrs. Carmody's milk to rate this film.
All right. So I'm going to preface this with listeners know that spooky films isn't really my genre. So there's that. That does affect the ranking just because it's not usually my cup of tea. But out of that genre, this was a good one, and I appreciate it. So I'll at least give 3.5 glasses of milk because it was a good one in a genre that I'm not that into. And I recommend it. If you are into the genre, please watch.
I'm so proud of you right now.
Okay, I'm gonna give it 5 out of 5 glasses, and I'm not
I'm clutching my pearls.
Scoff, this gay scoff. This gay squeal. Sorry, listen.
Girl, you haven't given anything 5, even your own films.
No, okay. So here's, you know what it is? It is because it scared me so much, but it didn't scare me for the reasons that a horror film would normally scare me.
Oh, good.
It scared me because of all the stuff that was happening inside of the grocery store that is way too accurate to what is happening today. And for the love of God, people, vote. I'm telling you right now, people, please vote. Anyway, I give this movie a 5 out of 5 in terms of milk, because it scared me in the way that I think I'm not normally scared in horror films. I was scared of the people and not of the creatures. So I give it 5 out of 5.
I'm about to start crying. I don't understand what's happening in this episode. I feel like very verklempt. I would give The Mist, I would give it 4.5 out of 5 glasses of Mrs. Carmody's milk. I think that it is, I know it's gross.
Just the name, Mrs. Carmody's milk. Ugh. Oh.
Listeners, Matt just
sorry.
the most disgusted face. And hilarious. I can't even keep it together. But
Mrs. Carmody's sour milk.
Oh God. Okay.
I give it 4.5 out of 5. I think that it is an incredibly important film. If, again, you're open to trying the genre, this isn't a slasher. It's not something that goes out of its way to do, crazy jump scares. It's really about the themes and about society. So if you're interested in that and want to watch something for spooky season, I highly recommend it. Is it perfect? No, which is why there's a 0.5 star left off. But I think that this is something that would be great if you're trying to dip your toes in.
What shows are on BQN, you ask? Well, here's a rundown of some podcasts you might be interested in. All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast covering all of Trek, hosted by Amy, Mark, Christos, and Kelvin. Bargain Bin Gamer, a YouTube show hosted by Davey, a self-proclaimed gamer who specializes in reviewing and showcasing affordable video games. If you're lost in the Delta Quadrant, check out The Captain's Couch, a Star Trek Voyager podcast hosted by Jeremiah sitting on Janeway's Ready Room couch. Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast showcasing films you probably missed but should definitely check out, hosted by Mark, Matt, and Laz. Beam Aboard the Galaxy Class, a Star Trek Next Generation podcast covering all of TNG, hosted by Amy, Joe, Rhea, and Kevin. History with the Szilagys, a snippet of historical events from around the world, hosted by Chrissie and Jason. For the newest Trek coverage, check out Infinite Diversity, hosted by Chrissie and Thad. Test your Trek knowledge with Treksperts Quiz, a Star Trek quiz show hosted and written by Davey. Union Federation, covering all things Star Trek and the Orville, which we all know is really a Star Trek show, hosted by Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley. Spill the Tea with What's the Tea, Bev, a Trek current events and fan interview show hosted by Christos. And for our Patreon members, we have The Hive Mind, BQN's monthly roundtable discussion with hosts and listeners. It's Green, a cornucopia of topics hosted by Mark, and Amy's Math Moments, a quick look at math moments in Star Trek, hosted by Amy. We know you have a choice of podcasts to choose from, and we thank you for listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Well, listeners, next week, we are going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to have a little toss salad here. We're not going to kink shame of your podcast, where we are going to be hopefully joined by representatives from the Fandom Podcast Network, Trek FM, and BQN. All of the movie pods in our community, we are inviting representatives from each of the pods to come on to BQN to discuss cinema. So it's going to be the first non-movie review pod that we're doing, where we are just getting a bunch of film nerds together to discuss film and have a good time with some cocktails. And hopefully you guys enjoy the discussion, because I know we are going to have a lot of fun.
We would love to hear what you thought of today's episode, and we hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, to continue our discussion there. You can also send your thoughts to @CinemaZPod on Twitter and BlueSky, and let us know if you'd like to recommend a film. Please follow the network on Twitter, BlueSky, and Instagram. Our handle is @BQN Podcasts.
So, Mark, where can people find you when you're not seeing a lady home?
Oh, well, I would. I totally would. I would. I'd do that. I'd walk through that mist. Fuck it. Anyway, how many F-bombs did I drop this episode? This is the first. I usually don't. But we have an explicit rating. Why not use it? Anyway, when I'm not doing that, you guys can find me on All Good Things, this Star Trek podcast that I don't swear on. And we discuss all themes throughout Star Trek. So we go, original series all through the modern Trek, and we talk about it. So if you're a Star Trek fan, you might enjoy it. I also have a show called It's Green for our Patreon subscribers. It's really good. It's an interview show, different topics. We mix it up. And you can find me in the BQN Collective Facebook page. And Matt, where can people find you when you are not arguing with an entire grocery store of white people about the fact that there can't possibly be any weird creatures out in the mist?
I live in Anaheim. When am I not arguing with a whole grocery store full of white people?
Bless you.
You can find me on Instagram at 1701BLERD. You can also find me on TikTok through that Instagram handle as well. And I think you can also find me on BlueSky on 1701BLERD. So drop in, say hi, say something. And Laz, where can people find you when you are not shooting acidic webbing from your anus?
That's a really good question. It happens accidentally all the time.
Oh, gee. Oh, gosh.
So sorry, listeners. You can find me on Twitter, BlueSky, Instagram, and Threads at Laz Marquez, LAZMARQUEZ. You can also find my work within posters and artwork for entertainment at www.lazmarquez.com. So please hit the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a star rating and written review. That helps others to find the show. You can also follow the entire network's podcasts with our master feed by searching BQN.
At this time, we would like to thank our associate producer, Amy Nelson. We love you, Amy. A special thanks to Lars Marquez for our artwork each and every week. The opening and closing music for this podcast is titled Dancing Dead and was provided by Ketsa from the Free Music Archive, providing royalty-free music for content creators.
If you'd like to help us keep all of our shows coming to you each week, you too can become a patron of the network on Patreon. We'll add you to the Hive Mind Facebook group so you can enjoy It's Green, Amy's Math Moments, and other network perks. With a monthly subscription of $5 or more, you can join our meetings on the Hive Mind Roundtable discussion on the second Saturday of each month. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch your messages.
Thank you for listening, and I apologize for my acid issues.
It's okay. That's why we have preparation. We hope you'll tune in next time.
I don't know.
Listeners, I don't know. Was that another dimension opening? Is that the noise that I heard? Is that what was
It was something opening.
It sure was. We're having a lot of strange happenings with bodies over here.
Strange energies.
Strange, oh God, strange energies. I can't.
Oh Lord.